Breakfast with friends.
And yes, it's that time of a Thursday morning when we say good morning, Mr. Nico Kleynhans. Thanks for coming through to our studio, sir.
Good morning to you and also to the listeners. How would you like 4.5 million rand?
Yes, please. That would be
I
great.
thought I'd get your attention today. Well, I want to discuss somebody who bemoaned the fact that he didn't have enough money.
Mm.
And so he designed a business plan. And that business plan was going to get him 4.5 million.
Hmm.
The plan had 5 steps. And this is how he went about putting that plan together. The first step was he needed to find an undertaker. That's people who
Okay.
organize funerals.
Yeah.
The second step in his business plan, he needed to find a forged death certificate.
Oh, whoa.
The third step was he needed to find a grieving relative who would submit a claim to an insurance company for 4.5 million.
His life insurance, in other words.
Because he discovered that if he were to die, there would be 4.5 million rand available.
Yo.
And like many of us, we think, why will I only have money after I die?
Yeah.
Why shouldn't I enjoy some of that money now? And that was his business plan.
Oh, wow.
And the second last step was that this grieving widow would go to the company, claim the money, and the last step, he would live happily ever after. And he implemented that step. Now, there's one problem that he didn't consider. If you are going to submit a death claim, you can't appear in public where somebody who's been to your funeral is going to notice that you're still walking around. It's going to scare you.
Yeah.
And that person quite possibly is going to go to the police.
Yeah.
And they're going to report that the dead has arisen.
Yeah.
And the dead is now walking around.
Sure.
And no matter how slow the police are at times, they're going to get their attention with that kind of comment.
And so the police went to the insurance company. They were interested. And after a lot of investigation, the guy who put together the business plan got a different kind of reward, and he was sentenced to 8 years imprisonment. The undertaker and the grieving spouse have also spent some time in jail. So while I encourage business plans, and while I encourage people to be creative, there are boundaries in how creative you can be, and there are boundaries about what the outcomes are going to be. I was also the victim of a scam where somebody also decided to draw up a business plan for themselves. And theirs were quite simple. I went to a store and I bought a tracksuit. And I was presented with a credit card machine. And I tapped my phone on the credit card machine, and it appeared that the transaction didn't go through. And so the creative person said, oh, there's something wrong with this machine. I'll give you another one. Tap again. And with that, they had a copy of my virtual credit card.
Oh, wow.
And then that virtual credit card was used to buy a very expensive pair of sneakers at a different store. Now, what miffed me was, firstly, I would never spend that kind of money at that kind of store buying those sneakers. Firstly, because that company uses child labor.
Oh, wow.
And I'm not going to spend my money supporting a company that uses child labor. So when the transaction came through on my phone, I contacted my bank. They blocked the transaction immediately and refunded me. I also knew that the store where the sneakers were sold had video cameras. And so we were able to prove quite easily that I did not present any credit card, and I was not the person buying the sneakers, And it didn't take long then to establish who the staff person was that had used the numbers from the first store, and those two people who conspired, and their business plan has also resulted in them spending some time incarcerated. So business plans are okay, but ethics also have to play a role. Now, all of this was triggered by a listener who contacted me in the past week. And her complaint was that twice in the last year, people have used her details, basically stolen her identity, and created accounts. And the only time she got to realize this was happening when she started getting lawyers' letters demanding payment. And she knew she had not made that debt. And so she had to go to a lot of effort to prove that she had not made the debt. She had to go to a lot of effort to fight, get everything cancelled, and to get her money back and to get her credit record cleaned. And so she asked an important question: how can I prevent this from happening? And this affects everybody listening right now. In order to make any kind of debt, you have to approach a service provider, and they will do a credit check on you. And there are various companies that keep a record of that credit check. And once a year, you're allowed to go to those companies. You can go to anyone. You can go to TransUnion, for instance, and you can get a free credit report. And if you look at that credit report, you can see who in the last 12 months has looked at your identity. Then you can see, oh, hang on, somebody looked at from MTN, or somebody from Vodacom, or somebody from a particular provider looked at my identity. And if it's not you, you can immediately start the processes of notifying that credit company that it's not you. They will stop any transaction, they will reverse any transaction, and your credit record can be cleaned up. So there are things you can do. That's how I discovered many years ago that somebody in Paarl was trying to buy a house in my name. So you can clear it up. And if you're a high net worth individual, you can also go to that same credit company and say, I want to be notified the minute somebody does anything on my record. That's going to cost you 1,000 rand a year. But you will get an immediate SMS. You will get it the minute that transaction happens. And then your immediate interaction could result in a scammer getting arrested immediately. You don't have the grief of trying to clean up your record. And remember, a scammer is probably doing that 30 or 40 times a year. It makes a massive difference to the crime statistics every time one person is stopped from committing scams. So we're not quite as helpless as we think we are. We can do something when we become a victim, and we can do a lot more to prevent ourselves from becoming a victim. Have a good day.
Thank you so much, Nico Kleynhans.